In November of 2023, Omegle, the infamous and massively popular roulette-style video chat site, was shut down by its owner, Leif K. Brooks, ending its nearly 14-year run under somewhat troubling circumstances. So, what happened? Well, if you're like me, you grew up with Omegle as a teenager and probably ran into your fair share of grown men exposing themselves on the platform. This sort of activity has plagued Omegle since its inception, with many sick adult users intentionally broadcasting illegal material to the unsuspecting underage users of the site. The prevalence of this dangerous material on Omegle is what eventually would lead to the platform's demise, with the owner becoming so disillusioned by the chat site that he created that he killed it, feeling as though he had created a monster. And he was getting hit with a bunch of lawsuits. Today, I'll be going through each of Omegle's major criminal controversies in chronological order, telling the story of the sick freaks that got this website taken down. This is the disgusting fall of Omegle. Today's video is sponsored by CookUnity. CookUnity offers weekly batches of gourmet meals prepared by our country's best restaurants and chefs and ships them right to your front door. Each CookUnity meal is prepared in a regional micro kitchen and is shipped at the peak of freshness. They arrive fresh, never frozen, and are fully cooked and ready to eat. All you gotta do is heat them up, which is perfect for anybody with a busy schedule like yours truly. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at what's on the CookUnity menu tonight. First off, we've got this adobo flank steak with potato and broccoli. The steak is super tender, and the little sauce that goes on top of it, slapping, dude. Next, we have the classic pasta bolognese with Parmigiano. And guys, this one just hits. I get cravings for pasta all the time, and like bolognese is just my go-to. I gotta stop eating this because I have another meal to try. Shit, I can't. And last but definitely not least, I've got here the Peruvian-style chicken thighs with cilantro rice and brown butter plantains. Get a little chicken bite going here. This is what you want. That's some good stuff, guys. Subscriptions start as low as $11 a meal, and the plan is super flexible. You can choose from 4 to 16 meals a week, and it's commitment free. You can skip or pause delivery, cancel at any time. You guys can get 50% off your first order of CookUnity meals by going to cookunity.com/WAVYWEBSURF and by using code WAVYWEBSURF50 at checkout. Big thanks to CookUnity for sponsoring today's video. One of Omegle's first high-profile criminal degenerate users was a man named Richard Finkbiner, a sick individual responsible for one of the most elaborate sextortion plots in United States history. In 2010, Richard Finkbiner was a 39-year-old man living in Brazil, Indiana. Constantly online, this disgusting man would begin sexually interacting with minors in online video chats, using Omegle along with other platforms, recording his victims throughout these calls. According to the FBI, Finkbiner, while using Omegle, would stream videos of pornography to those that he matched with, in an attempt to coerce incoming minors to reciprocate acts in a sexual way. The minors, who thought they were interacting with the person shown in the porn video, would then be asked by Finkbiner in text chat to join in, and some would sadly follow his instructions. When a minor fell for his trap, Finkbiner would then record their camera footage and add it to his personal CP collection. And if that wasn't depraved enough for you, this guy would often later anonymously contact his victims, revealing to them the fact that he had recorded them participating in those sexual behaviors, almost in a braggadocious manner, like, "I gotcha." While performing digital surveillance on his victims, Richard would collect their sensitive personal details, later using that information for blackmail, threatening to release the videos to porn websites or to send them to the victims' friends, family, and school teachers, unless these victims continued making sexually explicit content with him, recruiting the minors as digital sex slaves of sorts, forced to participate in acts with him while he recorded them for his catalog. According to FBI reports, these acts included coercing them into exposing themselves, forcing them to wear embarrassing outfits, and even forcing them to scribble Finkbiner's online alias on their body with a permanent marker. Through these elaborate and sickening strategies, Richard was able to collect a multitude of victims, both male and females, whose ages ranged from 12 years old to 17, and were living in 9 different states, including Indiana, West Virginia, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, New York, Michigan, Illinois, and Colorado. There was even one case involving a 12-year-old boy with transcripts showcasing the poor kid pleading with Richard and messages to not release his blackmail video to the internet, and the sick man essentially telling the boy tough luck and uploading the stuff anyways. Dude was a sadist and psychopath, a pedophilic monster. Another incident showing how heartless this guy was involved a teenage girl who was so traumatized after falling victim to Finkbiner's trap, she attempted suicide. Thankfully, she would survive. Now, she later sent an email to Finkbiner stating what she had done, and Finkbiner would then reply with, "Glad I could help." Finkbiner was able to get away with performing these highly exploitative acts for around 2 years, but sexual extortion reports from some of his later victims, a 14-year-old boy in Maryland and another in Michigan, would catch the attention of the feds. Authorities began an investigation, setting up a collaboration between the FBI and sheriff departments from all over the country where the reported crimes were taking place. This included the Oakland County, Michigan Sheriff's Department and the Prince George County's Maryland Department, with significant assistance from the Indiana State Police, the Clay County Sheriff's Department, the Terre Haute Police Department, and the Kokomo Police Department. It was truly a national endeavor. After a thorough investigation, authorities were able to trace these sickening crimes back to Richard, and he was pinned as the culprit. The monster of Omegle would finally be arrested on April 6th of 2012, with the feds seizing a staggering 22,000 video files from webcam feeds recorded by Finkbiner, half of which depicted sexual content from his sextortion ventures. The FBI also recovered close to 47,000 downloaded images, many of which depicted CP. The police would then begin the work in unwrapping his elaborate sextortion scheme, which would give Finkbiner additional charges. In total, Finkbiner was charged with 10 counts of sexual exploitation of children, 2 counts of extortion, and 1 count of possession of CP. The CP charge came from Richard both possessing images from the minors that he had extorted, as well as an entirely different collection of files. These are some serious charges, but they don't truly reflect the massive victim pool that Finkbiner had accumulated. Through reviewing the man's email communications, authorities were able to ascertain that there were at least 153 victims, and only 20 of them had been identified by name and confirmed by the authorities. Law enforcement would say, quote, "These charges formalize allegations of a systemic scheme to victimize hundreds of children and teenagers all over the country. Thanks to the tireless work of investigators over the last 3 months, we have been able to identify and contact many victims of these alleged acts. This process is ongoing, and we continue to do all we can to offer support after the nightmare they are alleged to have endured." Richard faced a maximum of 30 years in prison for each count of sexual exploitation of children, 2 years for the extortion charges, and a $250,000 fine for each of the charged offenses. In January of 2013, Richard would plead guilty to the charges of sexual exploitation and CP, and the deviant would be sentenced to serve 40 years in prison and was hit with a $70,000 fine, all coming on June 26th of 2013. It was also determined that after he was done serving his prison sentence, Richard would be forced to serve a lifetime of supervised release. At the time of his case being concluded, it was one of the largest sextortion cases in the country. This was the first major case where a criminal used Omegle to facilitate his crime, and it most certainly wouldn't be the last time the site would see foul play. Now we jump forward about 3 years to 2013 to our next case. It's the story of military serviceman Colin Lowry, a man not guilty for sex crimes against children, but for killing someone live on camera, broadcasting the act to an unsuspecting user live on Omegle, that user being still unknown to this day. On October 22nd of 2013, a 22-year-old Nevada Army reservist named Colin Lowry, along with 23-year-old Cherish Pincombe, were hanging out together with one of Colin's roommates named Patrick within Colin's home in Henderson, Nevada. During this chill session, they decided it would be fun to hop on Omegle and talk to some strangers, as one would do back in 2013. But sadly, this would be no routine night on Omegle, as a freak tragedy would begin to unfold the moment that their webcam booted up. According to reports, the story goes as follows. After chatting to a few different people, Colin and Cherish were matched up with a woman from Norway, who, curious about American culture, had asked if the group owned any guns. Colin, a military serviceman, most certainly did, and would promptly step out of view of the camera, returning after a short while with his rifle and a .45 caliber handgun. He then would begin eagerly showcasing the firearms to the anonymous Omegle user. Now, at some point, Colin is said to leave the area of the Omegle camera setup to go use the bathroom, leaving his guns at the computer, only to return again shortly after. By this point, the Norwegian had left, and another Omegle user is said to have been paired up with them. Now, what happens next is somewhat disputed, as the footage is not available for the public to view. But it's alleged that while resuming showing off his handgun, Colin would raise the pistol to Cherish's head in what could be described as a joking fashion and would pull the trigger, possibly believing that it wasn't loaded. The gun would discharge, shooting Cherish in the head, causing the woman to go limp. She was critically injured, and the shooting was broadcasted live to an anonymous viewer. While I'm unable to ascertain at what time of night or early morning the shooting occurred, at around 8:30 a.m., Colin Lowry would call 911 and report that a gun had been accidentally discharged within his home. Cherish Pincombe would be taken to the Sunrise Hospital, where she would later sadly die from the injuries that she had sustained in the shooting. When questioned by the police, Colin would admit that he had been drinking alcohol, but stated that he had no idea that the handgun was loaded, trying to plead the case of this whole thing being nothing more than a freak accident. Considering the apparent negligence at play, police felt this to be more than just a mistake and arrested Colin for the killing. He would insist that it wasn't his fault, even reportedly claiming that Cherish had loaded the weapon while he was in the bathroom. An interesting twist if true. However, investigators pushed back, stating that Colin had likely taken the weapon to the bathroom with him, inserting the magazine and loading it in there. Yeah, if you haven't picked up on it, the cops believe that Colin had straight up murdered this woman in cold blood like it was premeditated. In fact, they went as far as insinuating this whole situation was much more than accidental manslaughter. It was some sort of methodical thrill kill, with Colin booting up Omegle with the intention of slaying his friend live on camera. That's what they thought. Now, it's to note that there were no other witnesses within the room when the shooting occurred. Colin's roommate was apparently no longer around when this transpired. The cops had to get their hands on the Omegle footage, as it likely held the truth of what actually took place that evening. Police subpoenaed the Portland, Oregon-based website Omegle for footage of the shooting to possibly attain some sort of evidence to confirm their suspicions. They would receive some snapshots from Omegle, but it was only the chat portion of the website. These conversations, including some messages from Lowry, Pincombe, and the person that they were matched with. Sadly, though, it appears footage had not been archived by Omegle. But what about the other person on the other end of the video chat? Couldn't they speak to what had happened? Sadly, due to the anonymous nature of Omegle, this person has never been identified, and investigators were unable to ascertain any IP or metadata that could lead them in the right direction in regard to finding the enigmatic witness of the Omegle shooting. If someone was watching their screen at the time, it's very likely that they are keeping that gruesome moment with them to the grave, as no one has ever come forward. The snapshots recovered by the cops would unfortunately reveal very little, and it was a dead end barking up that tree. Colin's case would have to move forward without any video evidence and approached with a more traditional forensic style. After his arrest, Colin's bail would be set at $200,000, and investigators checked the magazine for Cherish's fingerprints to see if Colin's story had checked out. They would find that the physical evidence didn't show any of Cherish's fingerprints on the magazine. Something else interesting to think about here, Colin Lowry was a trained staff sergeant in the military reserve. He had many years of weapons training, apparently weapons training that he decided to just randomly forego on that day and act like a fool. I'm not trying to say that I know for a fact that Colin had a actual, inclination of murdering Cherish, but it is unusual for someone in the military to handle a gun this irresponsibly. There was reason for police to be suspicious. Later, Colin Lowry's roommates testified that Cherish and Colin, along with everyone else in the house, had a playful relationship with one another. Duffy, one of the other roommates, would even tell the court that he had not once ever seen Lowry get angry at Cherish. Colin Lowry's attorney would use this to argue that his client should be tried for manslaughter and not straight-up murder. Quote, "I heard no evidence whatsoever of premeditation, and I heard no evidence whatsoever of malice," the lawyer said. The judge would disagree and ordered that Colin should be tried on an open murder charge. In August of 2014, Colin would cut a deal with prosecutors and pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter with a weapon. And on October 24th of 2014, Colin Lowry would be sentenced to 8 to 20 years in prison. During sentencing, Colin would apologize to Cherish's family within the courtroom, saying he had never meant to hurt anybody. It seems his words fell on deaf ears though, as family members of the slain victim were quoted as calling Colin a cold-blooded killer. It's somewhat unsettling to think that there is someone out there who may have watched this shooting take place live on Omegle and just has gone about their life with that horrific scene burned into their brain. Whoever you are, I hope you're doing well, and perhaps one day, come forward. Let's talk. Sadly, not long after the shooting incident, another child sexual exploitation case would come forward, involving a man named Dennis Whitt, who would challenge underage girls on Omegle to a sick game in an effort to fulfill his twisted fantasies. Beginning in late 2013 and early 2014, 40-year-old Dennis Whitt of Marina, California, would begin participating in behavior that went beyond degeneracy, with the man frequenting websites like Omegle, pretending to be a 16-year-old boy named Lucas. Using this fake persona, he would interact with underage girls, never showing his face. During these chats, the 40-year-old fraud would quickly get sexual. Acting as Lucas, he devised the game, in which young girls would gain points for participating in lewd behavior. For example, girls could receive a point for taking off a piece of their clothing, or would receive more points by performing outright sex acts. A criminal complaint describes his activity. 3 girls began to play a game whereby they would do things on camera to earn points. Tasks began with things like waving and blowing kisses, but progressed to showing Lucas their genitalia, unquote. Dennis groomed these girls on Omegle and also on his Skype account that went by the username VampireGod, and his profile picture was a skull and crossbones. The guy is like a modern-day Camden Gerard Davis, but white and 40 years old. Now, what's truly sickening about Dennis in particular in the context of this video is the ages of the people that he victimized. The age range of his victims went from 16 all the way down to 7 years old. Just some really unspeakable crimes here. I say this with all seriousness, there are actual monsters that walk the earth, and I don't know how you could have any sympathy for someone like this, but it's just disgusting. The conversations with these 4 particular underage victims, who were all from Jefferson County, New York, began in May of 2013, according to the criminal complaint. It stated that during these interactions, Dennis recorded the girls 48 times between July 25th of 2013 and September 16th of 2013. The oldest one, at 16 years old, would communicate with Whitt daily, with the others being communicated with far less frequently. While Dennis performed these abhorrent acts with the children, it would not be long before the authorities got tipped off, as one of the fathers of the 4 underage victims from Jefferson County, New York, would find about the activities and alert the proper authorities and channels. The FBI, when alerted to this, would team up with the Silicon Valley Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, a group that specializes in targeting people who produce and distribute CP online. Together, they were able to find Dennis's Gmail, AOL account, and Skype account, and were able to backtrace these accounts, finding his IP address, which gave them his real-life location. The FBI then executed a search warrant, and on April 30th of 2014, authorities would storm into Dennis Whitt's house in Marina, California, where they would confirm that Dennis was in fact Lucas, and they arrested the man and escorted him outside in handcuffs. In a darkly hilarious moment, the pathetic Dennis would be photographed in handcuffs wearing a "Wanted Dead or Alive" t-shirt. Looks like the fat degenerate slob really dressed up for the occasion. What else would you expect from some fucking loser that goes by Vampire God on the internet and abuses children? While in Dennis's house, authorities would search through his computers and find 48 video files and 20 image files consisting of CP. Some of these videos were over an hour long. There was also content containing other children found on the internet as well. In total, a catalog of over 10,000 videos and image files were looked through. After his arrest, Dennis would admit to the officers that he had captured the videos of the underage girls and saved them to a folder titled My Girls. Now, this guy is a true piece of work, ain't he? Dennis Whitt would later be extradited to New York to face trial. He would plead guilty in November of 2014, and on April 8, 2015, Dennis would be sentenced to 60 years in federal prison on 7 counts of sexually exploiting children. When released from prison, Dennis must be put on supervised release for life and will be required to register as a sex offender. From what I can find, there was an attempt to appeal the sentencing, but it was denied. Thank God. Let's take a breather. Now we enter an era of relative peace. Let's do a bit of an Omegle history lesson. Now, thankfully for the next several years, Omegle would be free from major criminal events. Yeah, old men still went on there to broadcast themselves jerking off, but for the most part, things were quiet on the site. People were using it as it was intended, to have fun and talk to strangers and make, unique friendships with people from across the world, as was the intention of the site's creator, Leif K. Brooks. Leif had single-handedly developed Omegle while living at his parents' house when he was just 18 years old. He wanted to connect people from around the world in video form at random, a novel concept for the time. The 18-year-old just wanted people to have fun and communicate anonymously online. Talk to strangers, as was the slogan of the website. Launched in 2009, his creation was an instant hit, and Omegle would become established as a permanent part of internet culture in short time. A mainstay of web-based chatting visited by millions of people from around the world since. After all, Omegle's premise and what it was intended for was actually quite remarkable for the time. I mean, real-time video chatting on a web browser back in 2009 was kind of a big deal. Like, I personally remember hopping on Omegle with some buddies and ending up matching with some other teenagers our age somewhere else in the US and becoming friends with these guys. You might exchange Xbox gamer tags and play Call of Duty together, even keeping in touch with them for years at a time. When used correctly, Omegle could be a great way to make connections and friendships from the comfort of your own home. Sadly though, Leif's vision for a connected internet would become tainted by those with abusive tendencies. Predators began taking advantage of the accessibility of his platform and used it as a tool to victimize the many children that regularly visited it. This was a fact that hurt Leif on a personal level, as he himself is a self-admitted survivor of childhood rape. Though despite the misuse of his creation, the vast majority of people were using Omegle to make friends and simply to chat. Leif saw no reason to shut down the site completely and spoil the fun for everyone because of the actions of a few. This would be a stance that would prove increasingly difficult to maintain as more time passed and more predators emerged. Now, moving a bit forward on our timeline, we look at an Omegle abuse case from 2019, a particularly egregious one in that the perpetrator of this crime was in fact an officer of the law, a seemingly trustworthy member of society. 30-year-old Simeon Smith from Chesterfield, Virginia worked as a police officer within the city, beginning his occupation with the department in May of 2017. On the surface, Simeon was unlike any upstart officer, a seemingly clean-cut man, eager and filled with an almost naive enthusiasm for upholding the law and protecting the community. But his disposition was nothing more than a facade, as beneath the surface this guy was nothing more than a sick freak with a badge. On March 18, 2019, just before noon, 30-year-old Simeon Smith was apparently feeling aroused and would take to Omegle, looking for both women and young girls to talk to. It seems age mattered little. Officer Simeon Smith would eventually be matched up with an account claiming to be a 14-year-old teenage girl named Crystal. At the beginning of their lengthy and scandalous conversation, Simeon asked for the girl's age, to which she said she was 14. He then allegedly responded with, 30 male Richmond. Is that okay? The conversation led by Simeon then escalated to a sexual nature, with Simeon asking the minor, quote, "Tell me how old you were the first time you did anything sexual," unquote. Simeon pushed the sexual agenda in this conversation, with Crystal reportedly not reciprocating. The chat log ends with Simeon saying, quote, "Oh, and you asked where we would do it? Ideally on your bed. But if that's too risky, I'll rent a room at a hotel," unquote. Yeah, that's a policeman stating explicitly where and how he would like to have sex with someone who he thinks is a 14-year-old girl. Now, thankfully, what you must know is that there wasn't actually a real 14-year-old girl here. It was an undercover cop. Yes, the police, likely not realizing it at the time, had one of their own on the hook. In an effort to confidently identify who they were chatting with, the Crystal account would ask for the creep's social media, which led them to a Snapchat. Simeon would send Crystal a photo of himself, giving the undercover officers more evidence in regard to busting this at-large creep. During this investigation, the Hanover Police Department collaborated with members of the Southern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Children FBI Child Exploitation Task Force, which included officers from around the state of Virginia and the FBI and Homeland Security. This massive collection of law enforcement entities would hone in on Simeon, and they were able to link the IP address with Simeon's North Chesterfield home, a house that he actually lived in with his wife. The creep cop had been found and would be stung. Simeon would be arrested on March 22nd of 2019 and charged in Hanover County with 3 felony counts of use of a communication system to facilitate certain offenses involving children. Many items would be seized from his home, including Asus and Samsung laptops, 7 thumb drives, a CD, a yellow shirt, Sony and Nikon cameras, an external hard drive, and a ThinkPad laptop. Law enforcement likely eager to pry into these devices. He would be held without bond. The head of the Chesterfield Police Department would put out a statement while they were in the process of terminating Simeon's employment. Quote, "I am both disturbed and disgusted by the actions alleged, and I want to say clearly and unequivocally that there is no place for such conduct by anyone in our agency, in our profession, or frankly, in our community." In August of 2019, Simeon would plead guilty to 1 felony charge, while the other 2 were dropped, and on September 24th of 2019, Simeon was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but would have 8 years suspended along with 10 years of probation. Now we move forward to 2020 in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Around this time, Omegle saw a rise in popularity, as millions of lonesome people on lockdown sought to interact with others. With a vastly increased user base, this also meant more opportunity for crime to take place on Omegle. And that's what we find throughout 2020 and the early 2020s in general. Omegle just becomes rife with degeneracy. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The major 2020 case in my eyes is the case of Crystal Scott. It's a bizarre situation involving a degenerate sadist responsible for hideous animal abuse, and was only caught thanks to the concern of the online and furry community. In late April of 2020, when most were dealing with social distancing and lockdowns, folks from all walks of life flocked to Omegle, and one community that raised eyebrows in particular were the furries. Furries, thanks to their wacky animal costumes, were often pretty humorous to come across on the site, and many would enjoy interacting with them. The already isolated furries took to Omegle en masse during the pandemic, where they could discuss their love for the fandom, entertain others, and in some cases, just provide some wholesome cringe. But it wasn't all fun and games for the furries. In the midst of the COVID malaise, a furry browsing Omegle would come across a harrowing spectacle after being matched with an anonymous user. This camera feed showcased an anonymous woman that appeared to be wearing a mask made out of a freshly skinned animal hide, and they were holding a miniature, bloody and fleshy looking animal skull. These animal parts seemed like they had been procured from a recently killed animal, according to the user. The frightened furry snapped some photos of the scene and shared it to the web, thinking that the parts used in the individual's costume may have been from a freshly slain household pet. More sightings of this mysterious figure would be reported in short time, with all who encountered the account feeling extremely disturbed. This story was initially contained within the furry community, as it was apparently a furry who had found the anonymous user first, and the report would cause quite a bit of concern for the furries. As they did their best to investigate the anonymous woman from Omegle further, they found troubling hashtags associated with the grisly user. #furries, #furry fandom, and most importantly, #fursuit. Creating a fursuit out of animals slain for the purpose of creating a costume is unsurprisingly frowned upon within the furry community, and as far as I'm aware of, it is most likely illegal in most places. At least in the sense of using like cats and dogs, which appeared to be what was going on here. Did Omegle have an animal slaying fursuit maker on its hands? It wouldn't be long before these collective incidents would go viral, and many on Reddit would post about it. The thread would go as far as to allege that the woman on Omegle killed, burned, and skinned cats, and they had some compelling evidence to back this up. In the Reddit thread, an Omegle user would share an image that they had snapped of the mysterious woman while browsing Omegle, and this gruesome image was that of her holding a skinned cat's head, with the musculature and eyeballs still attached. It's really disgusting, and viewer discretion is highly advised if you go about seeking this photo out for yourself. But yeah, the cat looked like it was recently killed, and with this it became more likely that people really were dealing with some sort of Omegle cat killer. The public's interest in this case rose, as now not was just the furry community looking into it, the broader internet was as well. A TikTok account allegedly created by the crazy cat-killing Omegle woman was discovered with a description describing herself as a French taxidermist. Other accounts allegedly operated by the user would post taunting messages to those trying to track the Omegle cat killer down, such as "good luck to all" and "happy hunting." She even claimed to have actively infiltrated Discord groups that had been created to hunt her down. It seemed like this was nothing more than a game to this person. Animal abuse is no joke, however, and nobody found her sick antics entertaining. I mean, it's like she was trying to turn this into some kind of fucking ARG, but she's killing animals to facilitate that, allegedly. Why do this? One TikTok post allegedly written by the cat killer elaborates on their motive as to why. Quote, "Because I'm tired of degenerate brats and people who think that they are better than those. I was raped once by my boyfriend. I want to put fear in others, even if I scar brats." Okay, so let me get this straight. So apparently she got raped and went Joker mode, deciding to get a revenge on her abuser by striking fear into random strangers online with dead animals. You know therapy exists, right? Like you can literally just get counseling. Now this crazy cat killer lady seemed to be so confident in her anonymity and believing that she wouldn't get caught that she actually published her schedule to her TikTok as to when she would be going live on Omegle. So you can clearly kind of see here that this is like a give me attention kind of thing. Law enforcement really needed to step in like yesterday. The case had become quite the spectacle in the online world, and its notoriety would urge people to pressure law enforcement to get involved, with cyber sleuths sending calls and emails regarding the Omegle cat killer to police agencies across the US. But turns out cops wouldn't be necessary in unmasking this psychopathic animal abuser. Finally, after weeks and weeks of non-stop clue hunting and putting the dots together, the most dedicated of amateur online investigators pieced together the puzzle. Picking up the crumbs of evidence left by the Omegle woman, they were finally able to identify her. It was 19-year-old Crystal Scott from Kokomo, Indiana. She was the woman behind the gruesome Omegle streams. Now law enforcement got involved and would uncover the extent of the Omegle cretin's degeneracy. On May 3rd of 2020, Kokomo police would search 19-year-old Crystal Scott's home in Indiana. There, they would seize multiple deceased animals and body parts, including 2 cats in her freezer and a glass jar filled with an unidentified animal. Crystal had claimed that these animals were dead when she found them. Sadly, though, local police were not able to charge Crystal during this first visit, and the raid was falsely reported on by local authorities who called Crystal a hoax artist. Apparently, the police needed more evidence that she was harming or killing the animals found dead on her property, and that evidence would come. A bit over a month later, on June 26th of 2020, another complaint of animal cruelty would be submitted to law enforcement regarding Crystal, where a man believed that a pregnant cat that he had given to Crystal had been tortured and possibly killed by her. With this, finally, the FBI stepped in, and in July of 2020, Crystal was arrested on charges of animal crushing. The Omegle cat abuser had finally been put in handcuffs. At the time of her arrest, Crystal Scott was facing up to 7 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. She accepted a plea deal on November 10th of 2021 where she pled guilty to the 2 charges of animal crushing and was sentenced to serve 30 months in prison and 5 years of supervised release. And it's very likely that those creatures that were shown on camera were ones that she had killed. You have to give a nod to the furry community for blowing this story up in the initial stages and getting the ball rolling in regards to putting this monster in a cage where she belongs. Now we get to our final headline story in the chronology of criminal activity on Omegle. It's the last major case before the site's official shutdown. It involves an Omegle predator hunter of sorts busting an online creep by the name of Matthew Manoski. On June 4th of 2023, YouTuber Nico is Cold would upload the first of his catching creeps on Omegle videos. In this series, Nico would employ a young-looking adult woman that pretended to be underage, in an effort to catch older men sexually flirting or interacting with them, under the assumption that the grown woman was a minor. He's trying to catch pedophiles basically using an adult posing as a minor. One of these creeps discovered by Nico and his team would be a man going by the name of Mike, who during the conversation would be told that the girl on camera was 16. Despite this, Mike would ask the young girl to take her sweatpants off, after which Nico would reveal himself, making the creep known that he had been caught in 4K. While indeed creepy, nothing overtly criminal had been caught in Nico's video. But it was the comments section under Nico's video that was far more interesting in terms of spelling out who Mike really was. Curiously though, the day that Nico uploaded this video, the YouTuber would receive a plethora of comments from random internet users, expressing how they too had had uncomfortable run-ins with this Mike fellow on Omegle, insinuating that he was a serial Omegle sex pest of sorts that targeted the underaged. A comment says, "Guys, please read this. I have met one of the creeps on here. So a few weeks ago, I was 14. I'm 15 now. But the one who was named Mike at 5 minutes 16 was always on the tag board. And I remember the first time I saw him was traumatizing. Back then, I tried to be nice like everyone, and well, that was a bad idea. He kept calling me cute and pretty repeatedly asked me if I thought he was attractive, to which my reply was that I thought he looked like a dad, and he just laughed. I wanted this guy to be exposed so much, so I asked him questions. He has a job and a wife and obviously his 16-year-old kid. I skipped him when he told me he had a fetish for like underwear and wanted to know what color mine were. Before I skipped him, however, I told him in the chat that he was a pedo and to get off Omegle, but I saw him again a week ago. It was traumatizing, so I skipped. I wanted him to get caught so badly, but thank you so much, Nico, for catching him. I really hoped this would happen. I'm still scared to get on Omegle nowadays, and mostly do it with friends, but the fact that over 300,000 people saw his face, I'm so happy. Thank you, I can sleep well tonight." Edit, I forgot to mention his age is 53. I made him tell me for the first appearance I had with him. Merely a few weeks later, Nico would meet Mike again in his second edition of Catching Creeps on Omegle. In this video, Mike would run away once more after Nico appeared on camera.
No. Yeah, buddy, you're done again, pal. Yeah, this fucking guy, bro.
Later, it would be revealed that Mike was actually caught flirting on another YouTuber's Omegle creep busting channel called Ashley Guggs. He was seen in a video called Thirst Trapping Predators on Omegle, uploaded on June 8th of 2022. And this was published a whole year before Nico's first exposed video came out, so he had been recklessly flirting for a while, allegedly. In this Ashley video, Mike would say that his age was 52 years old and that he was a kinky, dirty, perverted old man. Ashley would then attempt to bait Mike and say that she was only 15, to which Mike replied, quote, "This is where the fun begins." But apparently he realized he was being set up and dipped out. Mike likely thought that his run-ins with the Omegle predator hunters would have little impact on his life. Sure, he got ridiculed by a few YouTubers, but at least he was staying out of a jail cell. At least these guys weren't cops, right? Well, the continuous pattern of this guy showing up in Omegle predator videos would catch up to him and have catastrophic repercussions on Mike's family and his work career, and his appearances in these videos would lead to him being suspected by actual law enforcement and put behind bars. As stated by Nico is Cold on August 17th of 2023, Mike's son would get into contact with Nico, apparently revealing to Nico that Mike's real name wasn't Mike at all, and that his real name was actually Matthew Manowski.
On August 17th, 2023, Mike's son messaged me on Instagram, and as it turns out, Mike had been lying about his identity the whole time. His real name was Matthew.
The son would explain to Nico that his videos had been sent to his stepmom, or Matthew's wife, and that the couple was in the process of getting a divorce. The son apparently expressed to Nico, though, that he hoped the videos could be taken down due to the embarrassment that he and his family were receiving.
Mom at the time saw the video, and now they are in the middle of a divorce. My whole family knows, and it's just been not good recently. I know it's your job, but if you could do something about the video, removing it would be the best option for me and my family. People at my school know about it, and I don't want to go back to school and get made fun of for it.
While this is happening, family members of Matt are getting in touch with Nico as well, as the videos had gotten on their radar and they were looking into the situation.
The guy that you guys caught twice in your Omegle videos is quite literally my second cousin. My dad got sent this video today, and I've been digging into this more for him before we take action.
And then an alleged detective from a police department in Matt's local area would contact Nico, revealing that Matt was a part of a separate investigation, like he was already being looked into.
Identifying a subject in one of your catching creeps on Omegle videos, and that subject is a part of a separate investigation. I believe your video would be beneficial to my investigation.
Now get this. In Nico's video, he would reveal that Matt was telling his family members that he was a paid actor and that this was some sort of collaboration with Nico. Like, dude was trying to say he was in on Nico's videos. Naturally, when these family members reached out, Nico would tell them that this was a complete fucking lie. Becoming more desperate to save his reputation, later Matt would somehow find Nico's phone number and was able to get in touch with the YouTuber to plead his case. Nico recorded the call.
I know that my son has reached out to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to actually listen to what he has to say.
I just wanted to talk and just see what's like going on.
With multiple reports and video appearances, the FBI did actually get involved with Matt. It would be revealed that Matt was from Valparaiso, Indiana, and the underage predator allegations surrounding him were spreading like wildfire in the community. People around the city would give tips to the FBI, which led to Matthew's arrest on October 6th of 2023, due to the separate investigation mentioned previously. Turns out he was allegedly doing more than just flirting with minors on Omegle. Matt would be charged with 1 count of child molestation, where it was disclosed that the 53-year-old Matthew Manowski was being accused of molesting a young girl multiple times, starting when she was 9 years old up until she was 11 years old. These alleged crimes took place from December of 2020 to July of 2023. In Nico's video, he would reveal that the girl was allegedly molested up to 2 times a week within the girl's household while the family was there. One such incident allegedly happening while they were all sitting at a table and she was sitting in Matt's lap. Matthew received 1 felony charge of child molestation. It was also reported that Matthew was a football coach as well. Pretty unsettling. It said that before the police were involved and Matthew was confronted about his allegations, he said, quote, "If I ever did anything she didn't like, she should have told me to stop." The YouTuber would also reveal that Omegle had ceased operations 1 month after Matthew's arrest. And Nico speculated that Matthew's arrest, along with the media attention around it, had a lot to do with the shutdown. The case of Matthew Manoski would be the final major criminal case to come out of Omegle, as the website would be officially shut down by Leaf in November of 2023, with Leaf himself stating in his own farewell address on the website that his decision was very much influenced by the abundance of child predators that had come to occupy his website over the years. It's truly sad what happened to Omegle, a place created by an enthusiastic 18-year-old programmer living in his mom's house who just wanted people to connect and have fun on the internet, only to slowly become corrupted over the years by the dregs of society, co-opted and defiled to a place that could only be browsed if using extreme caution. While Leaf states in his farewell address that his decision to shut down Omegle was motivated by his disgust of predators, there may have also been an additional factor. According to a report from ABC News, the shutdown was the result of a lawsuit. A suit filed back in 2021 against Leaf and Omegle from a sexual assault victim who claimed Omegle matched her with a sexual predator when she was just 11 years old, and this girl alleged that the match resulted in her being abused. According to ABC News, the attorney representing the victim claims the Omegle shutdown was the result of mediation between the platform and their client. Whatever the case, Omegle is gone. That being said, there are many other Omegle-like websites still around, like Chat Roulette, and random webcam-based chat sites are certainly not going anywhere. They're a staple of the internet. However, if today's timeline has taught you anything, use these platforms with caution, and if you have kids that are using them, some extremely careful supervision certainly wouldn't hurt. And well, you made it to the end of the timeline. That was the disgusting fall of Omegle. Let me know what you guys thought about the video down below in the comments section, and let me know who or what you want me to talk about next. I want to give a major shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys. WAVYWEBSURF out. Peace.